Hello, and welcome to the tutorial on exploration of imported data. By the end of this tutorial, you will be able to do basic exploration of imported data in the Python environment. In the previous tutorial, we had successfully imported the data in the Python environment and it is now available with us. Let us examine this imported data. First thing we notice about our data set is number of columns which represent the variables. We see that we have 22 columns in total, of which 21 from ID, date house was sold, sale price and so on, to all the way to lot area after renovation are labeled. That is named while the first column is not labeled. The first column is an additional column which gets created automatically when you import any file into the Python environment. This column acts as an index column for the dataset and numbers each row or the observation in the dataset starting with 0, 1, 2, 3 and so on till the last row in the dataset. Here, the dataset has 21,613 rows as you can see from the last row. If you scroll down using the slider, and hence the index goes from 0 to 21,612. Since the index starts from 0, its maximum value is always 1 less than the total number of rows in the dataset, as we can see here. Now, let's examine the other variables. By looking at the data, we can see that it contains the sale price of different houses and their different characteristics such as number of bedrooms, bathrooms, lot area, flat area, number of floors, waterfront view, date on which house was sold, etc. etc. So we can deduce that this dataset contains the selling price of houses in the past. Now intuitively, we know that selling price of a house would depend on its characteristics, and hence sale price is our dependent variable or target variable, while the house characteristics such as flat area, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, etc. etc. are independent variables whose values could influence the sale price of the house. So using this data, we would like to build a machine learning model which will predict the selling price of a house based on its characteristics. We would discuss this in detail in a later module. By looking at the values of different variables across rows, we can infer that most of the variables such as ID, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, flat area, lot area, overall grade, area of the house from basement, basement area, age of house, etc. etc. are all numeric in nature. There are a couple of variables like waterfront view, number of times visited. These are categorical in nature as the variables contain string values. The data also contains a variable date house was sold in time format, which contains the date when the house was sold. Let us check if our understanding is correct by finding out the data type for the imported variables. For that, we write the code raw_housing_data.dtypes. Next, we press Ctrl and Enter and we get the data type for all the variables. We get three types of data types, namely integers represented as int64, decimal numbers or floating point numbers represented as float64, string or category variables represented as object. So, we have 7 variables which are integers, that is discrete numerical variables, 10 variables which are decimals, that is continuous numerical variables, and 4 variables which are string or category variables. The dataset consists of thousands of records and it may become difficult to scroll and view the data. So, let us view the top or bottom few rows of the dataset to get an idea about it. Let's write the code for viewing the top 10 records of the dataset. For writing the code, we first write down the name of the dataset, that is raw_housing_data. Then put a dot and write head and then the number of lines we wish to view in the brackets. The general structure for such code is name of data set dot function name in the bracket input arguments. Here, the name of the dataset is raw_housing_data. The function name is head, and this function takes the number of rows you wish to view from top, 10 in this case, as the input argument. Let's press Ctrl plus Enter to execute the code. We get the top 10 rows of the dataset in the output. Similarly, we can view the last few rows of the dataset. For that, we just replace head with tail. So the code would be dataset name, that is raw_housing_data, then dot, tail, and in brackets the number of rows to display and press Ctrl and Enter. The code displays the bottom 10 rows of our dataset. Easy, wasn't it? That's it in this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we will calculate basic descriptive statistics for the variables in this dataset.